Good evening and welcome. This is Newsfirst Primetime News coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios in Colombo. Today is the 13th of March 2024. For the Newsfirst team, I am Jama Ratnayaka.
And I'm Rochelle Tamodra. Let's start off with a look at your headlines for tonight.
On to tonight's top story. The United States is conducting intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance flight demonstrations for the Sri Lankan military. A dedicated aircraft from the United States reached Ratmalana for this purpose.
A N-7700 Bombardier aircraft by the United States Department of Defense, along with its crew, touched down at the Ratmalana airport for the ISR training program. The launch of the training on Tuesday was graced by the National Security Advisor Sagala Ratnayaka, US Ambassador to Sri Lanka Julie Chang, Commander of the Navy Vice Admiral Priyantha Pereira, Commander of the Air Force Air Marshal Udeni Rajapaksha, among others. Over time, this new capability will help Sri Lankan tri-services to better protect Sri Lanka's marine resources, deter illicit trafficking, monitor its exclusive economic zone, and ensure the security of its seas. The N-7700 Bombardier jet aircraft in question is equipped with advanced technical systems and possesses the capability to operate at altitudes exceeding 40,000 feet. This particular aircraft, with a continuous flight endurance of 14 hours, is also outfitted to carry a payload of up to 14,000 pounds. In a significant development, the American government is set to deliver a state-of-the-art Beechcraft 360ER aircraft to the Sri Lanka Air Force during the months of June or July this year. The estimated value of this aircraft stands at approximately $22 million. The N-7700 Bombardier jet closely resembles the operating system of the Beechcraft 360ER type aircraft, making it an ideal platform for training purposes. The ongoing training sessions aim to provide practical instruction to Sri Lankan Air Force pilots, technical personnel, and other officers. Areas covered include aircraft operations, security, protocols, and flight conditions. Group Captain Dushan Vijay Singha, the Air Force media spokesperson, has confirmed that a delegation of Air Force pilots and engineers is scheduled to travel to the United States in April for an in-depth study of the aircraft's operational aspects. Currently, the Sri Lanka Air Force operates two Beech King Air 200 aircraft for both maritime and land-based operations. With the addition of the new Beechcraft 360ER aircraft, the country's maritime capabilities will be significantly enhanced. The US Ambassador to Sri Lanka said that the United States is dedicated to its partnership and collective efforts to foster collaboration in humanitarian aid, disaster relief, and maritime security, contributing to a safer and more prosperous Indo-Pacific region.
IMF mission in Sri Lanka held talks on energy sector reforms yesterday.
Sri Lanka's Minister of Power and Energy, along with State Finance Minister Shahan Semasinghe, met with the IMF mission in Sri Lanka yesterday. Peter Brewer, IMF Senior Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, and other officials of the IMF held a discussion at the Ministry of Power and Energy to review the progress of CEB and CPC operations and commitments. Matters on recent tariff reduction in the electricity sector, CEB and CPC balance sheets of 2023, current financial position of CEB, accounting principles and standards adopted, BSTA filling automation, dispatch audit to be conducted, outstanding payments, forecast for 2024, CPC pricing formula and CPC operations were briefed and discussed.
A survey by Verite Research claims that Sri Lanka failed to meet 33% of IMF commitments due by the end of February.
Verite Research claims that Sri Lanka verifiably failed to meet 33% of the commitments due by end February 2024 in its International Monetary Fund program. It said that many of these commitments that are classified as not met on IMF tracker were designed to improve governance. These include commitments related to publishing information and those that require the passage of governance improving legislation. Verite Research claims that the status of 36% of the commitments are classified as unknown, which means sufficient data was not made available to assess their progress. By end February, 31% of the commitments were verifiably met.
Human Rights Watch said the IMF should oppose restrictions on freedoms in Sri Lanka.
Human Rights Watch said in a letter to the IMF that the International Monetary Fund should urge Sri Lanka's government to abandon draft legislation that would severely curtail civil society and jeopardize the IMF's program in the country. Human Rights Watch said that the IMF's $3 billion bailout of Sri Lanka, which is linked to government commitments to reform, helped stem the immediate economic crisis after the country defaulted on its foreign debt in 2022, but further progress is threatened by the adoption of laws by President Ranil Wickremesinghe's administration that would severely restrict basic rights. Meenakshi Ganguly, Deputy Asia Director at Human Rights Watch, said that as the economic collapse in 2022, Sri Lankans demanded good governance and an end to corruption, but instead now face draconian laws and policies that threaten human rights and undermine reforms. She said that the protests helped bring President Wickremesinghe to power, but instead of listening to calls for change, he's clamping down on peaceful dissent. Human Rights Watch said the IMF should protect the credibility and efficacy of its program in Sri Lanka by publicly calling upon the government to abandon the proposed NGO law, impose a moratorium on use of the Online Safety Act, and amend the anti-terrorism bill to ensure that it respects human rights standards.
Dr. Harsha De Silva, Chairman of the State Finance Committee and SJB MP, underscored the importance of being aware of the agreements that would be reached with foreign creditors. Speaking at a press conference, he clarified that he requested a meeting from the President for such awareness.
Our next step is to come to an agreement regarding the bilateral loans with the Official Creditor Committee, or OCC, that means with the members of the Paris Club. State Ministers of Finance are saying that they are hoping to hold such a discussion at the IMF World Banking meetings happening next month in Washington. We need to hold discussions before they come into an agreement, and a non-disclosure agreement should be signed before holding discussions. That means they will not share the details of the discussions to other parties. Creditors have strictly warned in a letter that they will take all possible measures to stop the next IMF installment. This government will not receive the next IMF tranche until they come into an agreement. They have proposed macro-level bonds to the government. The government said that they are not ready to accept it. There is a discussion ongoing at the international financial market, and another proposal has been submitted a week ago. We do not know its current situation. We, as an important and a respected opposition, would like to remind that President Ranil Wickremesinghe's tenure will last only for a few months. All the governments that come into power thereafter will have a responsibility to protect this agreement, not as a political party, but rather as an independent government. Now, once President Ranil Wickremesinghe signs this new debt restructuring agreement, the next government has the full responsibility of carrying it forward the same way even after his tenure. The opposition should come to a discussion with the international bondholders, commercial creditors and bilateral creditors before reaching an agreement with the creditors. That is where transparency lies.
විපක්ෂ සාකච්ඡාවකට ආයුතුයි. එතන තමයි විනිවිදභාවයක් තියෙන්නේ.
The state-owned enterprises restructuring unit announced the transfer of the liabilities of Sri Lankan Airlines.
The state-owned enterprises restructuring unit announced the transfer of the liabilities of Sri Lankan Airlines to the government of Sri Lanka. These liabilities are $105 million of treasury guaranteed debt due to Bank of Ceylon, 12.9 billion rupees of treasury guaranteed debt due to Bank of Ceylon, $105 million of Treasury guaranteed debt due to People's Bank, and 18.5 billion rupees of Treasury guaranteed debt due to People's Bank. It added that consequent to the above, the only component of significant term borrowing that remains in the books of Sri Lankan Airlines is a $175 million 7% 5-year international bond issued in 2019. This bond is also backed by a sovereign guarantee and is due for settlement in June 2024. In addition, the Cabinet has decided that in the event of a ruling in favour of Sri Lankan Airlines with respect to arbitration case filed by it against Airbus SE, steps will be taken to transfer proceeds arising from the same to the government of Sri Lanka. The Bank of Ceylon informed the Colombo Stock Exchange that Kavan Ratnayaka was appointed as the new chairman of BOC. It added that Ratnayaka has been appointed to succeed Ronald C. Pereira, President's Counsel, as chairman of Bank of Ceylon. Kavan Ratnayaka is the brother of National Security Advisor Sagala Ratnayaka and holds a Bachelor of Science from the University of California.
The Indian High Commissioner articulated a promising vision for Sri Lanka's energy landscape, emphasizing that by integrating Sri Lanka's electricity supply system with India's national grid, Sri Lanka has the potential to transition into an energy exporting nation. He highlighted India's commitment to facilitating this transition through strategic investments in cost-effective energy projects within Sri Lanka.
The India-Sri Lanka Joint Working Group on Renewable Energy held its inaugural meeting in Colombo. The inaugural meeting of the Joint Working Group on Renewable Energy, established under the Memorandum of Understanding on Cooperation in the Field of Renewable Energy in July 2023, convened in Colombo. Co-chaired by Sri Bhupinder Singh Balha, Secretary of India's Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, and Dr. Sulakshana Jayawardena, Secretary of Sri Lanka's Ministry of Power and Energy, the meeting aimed to bolster bilateral collaboration in renewable energy initiatives. During the meeting, the Indian delegation gave detailed presentation on India's achievements in the renewable energy sector, citizen-centric schemes offered by the Government of India to encourage investments in the renewable energy sector, the National Green Hydrogen Mission, and India's cross-border electricity trade. The Sri Lankan side highlighted the present status of the power sector in Sri Lanka and the contribution of renewables in the energy mix. Secretary informed that since the government of Sri Lanka was working towards achieving an ambitious target of 70% generation through renewable energy by 2030, there existed vast potential for investments by Indian companies. The Indian side agreed to extend all possible technical assistance to government of Sri Lanka in the areas of solar, wind, biomass and grid connection by offering trainings in premier Indian institutions such as National Institute of Solar Energy, National Institute of Wind Energy and National Institute of Bioenergy. The Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka said that energy connectivity with India will prepare both South Asian countries for the future, with the island nation poised to be an energy exporter.
We are now talking about a land bridge, and what will it do? It will uplift the vast populations living along the alignment of the land bridge into prosperity and development that we have not really even imagined yet fully. We are looking at a deep energy connectivity between us, and sometimes there are people who tell you that energy connectivity with India may not be that good, but actually we are conceiving it in a way that we are preparing both countries to be ready for the future. As you know, in India, we are building nodes of connectivity with our neighbors. We are connecting our grids to Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh. We are connecting our grids to the Middle East, to the countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. We are connecting our grids on the east with Singapore. And if we connect India and Sri Lanka with our electricity grids, the immense potential that Sri Lanka has, which cannot be utilized within Sri Lanka, can make it an energy exporter. It will bring additional revenue, and it will also reduce the cost of the energy, which is such a significant contributor to economic development. And if you have to have progress and prosperity, you need to generate that additional income, additional revenue that can propel you forward. And then, of course, we are doing other forms of energy connectivity as well. We are investing in this country to make energy cheaper. We are trying to bring connectivity by air, through sea, and we are also connecting people to people. As you know, India contributes the largest amount of tourists into this country.
In the midst of discussions surrounding the integration of Sri Lanka's national electricity system with India's, significant attention has been drawn to the Mana wind power project.
Of particular concern in these deliberations has been the potential environmental ramifications of the Mana wind power project alongside its anticipated economic implications for the nation. The following is a Newsfirst special report delving deep into this issue.
Renewable energy initiatives which mitigate carbon emissions and provide cost-effective electricity are commendable. However, to ensure both affordability and environmental sustainability, it is crucial to consider environmental impacts. Neglecting this aspect may hinder the achievement of renewable energy's fundamental goals.
What is going to take place in Mana?
The construction of 500 megawatt wind and solar power plants is ready to get underway in the regions of Mana and Punarin. This ambitious project comes with a total investment of $442 million. The combined facilities are expected to produce a substantial 250 megawatts of energy. Notably, the wind farms in Mana will contribute significantly to this capacity. On March 11, 2022, the project contract was formally executed. Adani Green Energy, an entity within the Adani Group in India, is involved in the project, and their involvement extends to both investment and implementation. As per a cabinet paper, the government of India had proposed Adani Green Energy as the ideal partner for this venture. Furthermore, the project is being considered under a government-to-government framework, as highlighted in the relevant cabinet paper. Remarkably, the project was awarded without a competitive bidding process. Mana is strategically positioned as the closest point between India and Sri Lanka, and coastal land in the region was allocated for the project. This area, known for its natural beauty and historical value, holds immense promise. Mana boasts rich biodiversity and valuable mineral resources. Additionally, the 16 islands connecting Rameswaram in India to Sri Lanka are anchored in the Mana region. Among these islands, the 8 that belong to Sri Lanka have been designated as Adams Bridge Marine National Park by the Wildlife Conservation Department. Simultaneously, India has declared its 8 islands as the Gulf of Mannar National Park. The project site lies closest to the narrower sea border between India and Sri Lanka. Scientific research has already confirmed the presence of natural gas reserves in Mannar.
How is the selection of Mana for a wind power project leading to an issue?
Experts well versed in the subject matter are examining the Mana renewable energy initiative from dual perspectives. One is economic implications and the other is environmental considerations. Dr. Jagat Gunawardena, an esteemed environmentalist and legal expert, recently emphasized a critical concern during the Mawata program. Despite Mana's selection as a project site, he contends that there exist numerous other locations with substantial potential for wind power implementation.
There are other locations across 7 other districts with high potential for this project, and Mana is not one of them. The project should go to the site with the highest potential. They must first set up these projects at those sites. Is it justifiable to award the project to Adani at a time when Mana has a mid or low potential?
Dr. Jagat Gunawardena also raised concerns over the allocation of land for the project.
The project comprises 52 windmills and they want 150 hectares for roads and in total 200 hectares. If you do the math, each windmill will occupy 3 hectares of land, which is around 7 acres. There is a concealed aspect into this project.
A pressing environmental issue has come to the forefront, drawing attention to Sri Lanka's pivotal position within the Central Asian Bird Flyway. As one of the southernmost waypoints along this migratory route, Sri Lanka plays a critical role in the conservation and sustenance of avian populations. Mana, in particular, stands out as a significant destination within this flyway. Professor Sampath Senaviratne, a distinguished researcher, has dedicated his scientific efforts to understanding and documenting this intricate ecological phenomenon. He elaborated further on this during the Pathigada program.
Some of the birds from Mana and Pesale migrate to Europe to lay their eggs and return after the eggs hatch with their young. They stay here for around 6 months in areas rich in fish populations. Around 15 million birds from 30 different countries migrate using 8 routes, and one of those routes is the Central Asian Bird Flyway. Sri Lanka is located on the edge of that route, so this will lead to a complete end to migration of birds from around 30 countries. This is a highly eco-sensitive region.
How will wind power projects impact bird migration?
The length of a blade reaches 180 meters at the highest point. Then it turns around for 20 meters each second. That becomes an issue for the birds. The proposed project is located in the middle of Adams Bridge Marine National Park and the Wankalai wetlands. When one takes a look at the environment feasibility report, it has been prepared to facilitate this project.
Dr. Rohan Petyagoda, a respected biodiversity scientist, has been vocal about this.
These 52 gigantic turbines, each one 220 meters tall. These will be the third highest structures in Sri Lanka, and they'll be located in the heart of Mannar Island, which is one of the most important bird areas in the world. Millions of birds, more than 120 species from across the Northern Hemisphere, some of them from as far away as the Arctic Circle, migrate southwards to Mannar every winter. It is primarily for that reason that the island is surrounded by protected areas like Adams Bridge Marine National Park, Madhu National Park, the Wankalai Sanctuary, Giant's Tank Sanctuary, and the Wadattalthivu Nature Reserve. And we know that wind turbines kill hundreds of thousands of birds every year. They've accumulated reams of valuable data, and they've put it all in the public domain. Not just that, but they've fixed tiny satellite transmitters to the birds and tracked their movements across the world. They know precisely how and when birds migrate and which routes they use. In 2016, despite warnings that high-tension power lines across bird corridors kill birds, the CEB, aided, abetted and funded by the Asian Development Bank, decided to erect 220 kilovolt high-tension overhead transmission lines across the Wankalai Sanctuary. There again, several scientists, including myself, warned of the harm to birds and the unique wetland habitat. Since then, these cables have been killing threatened species of birds by the hundred.
What was revealed from the EIA prepared with regard to the Mannar Wind Power Project? This report is now in the possession of the Central Environment Authority.
This report contains information on the impact that wind power plants pose on migratory birds. We will have to consider that in the technical evaluation. The CEB will also consider the data on birds and how they have been used in preparing this report. We will be appointing a separate team for this.
The report also produces solutions to the issue.
The EIA produces a separate zone. In addition, it proposes to stop the turbines during bird migration and to use radar for this purpose. This will be an automatic stoppage of the system, and that is what is mentioned in the report.
An additional critical consideration in this context pertains to the tourism industry. Notably, there has been a surge of tourists who travel to this area for the sole purpose of observing this natural phenomenon. This begs the question: at a time when Sri Lanka is desperately trying to expand its tourism potential, will those attracted to these migratory birds still visit Sri Lanka to look at a wind farm? The Central Environment Authority has announced the formation of an expert committee tasked with impartially evaluating the proposed project. Their decision, expected in the future, holds significant implications. While renewable energy initiatives are commendable, we must tread carefully. If we compromise a delicate ecosystem in the pursuit of such projects or fail to ensure equitable benefits for our nation's economy and citizens, we face a grave dilemma. These decisions reverberate across generations. We bear the responsibility to thoroughly investigate and transparently report the ground reality. The consequences, both positive and negative, affect our fellow citizens directly. Informed awareness is paramount.
Newsfirst with the people.
The mortal remains of the 4 individuals who tragically lost their lives after they were gunned down in the Pittigala and Ambalangoda regions have been returned to their respective homes. Among them, 2 were unmarried, while the other 2 were fathers, and one of them was a father of a 7-month-old.
On Monday evening, at approximately 8:20 p.m, a violent shooting occurred at a small shop located in the Pittigala, Guruvalla area of Galle. 2 assailants arrived on a motorcycle and discharged a T-56 rifle. Tragically, 2 individuals lost their lives and 4 others sustained injuries during this unfortunate event. One of the patrons visiting the establishment was Sachin Madhuanga, aged 32, who tragically succumbed to his injuries on site. As a parent to 2 children, he was fatally shot during his presence in the premises alongside his wife, who sustained injuries and was subsequently admitted to a medical facility. The interment of Madhuranga's remains took place at a private florist in Thalgaswala, Mapalagama, with funeral rites solemnized earlier.
He has visited the shop to purchase food for the children after securing money from paddy harvesting. He has not done any harm to anyone. He was in the wrong place. The 2 children are helpless and the wife is in critical condition in the hospital.
26-year-old Kavisha Anjana, a resident of Guruvalla, Horangalla, was another person who was killed in the shooting. His remains were moved to his residence last night.
I heard several rounds. After a pause, I heard another. I ran to the shop front. I saw 3 people on the ground. I pray that no one has to face such a tragedy.
Police Chief Deshabandhu Thennakon visited the residence of the late Kavisha and paid his respects, following which he spoke to reporters. There is a story behind this incident. This shooting was a contract killing handed over to these criminals over a personal dispute. Notably, 2 people who were not even connected to that were gunned down. Hours later, another incident was reported, and that is based on the non-settlement of drug money, and that resulted in another killing. In that incident too, 2 innocents were killed, and not the intended targets. It is very dangerous for unarmed innocents to be killed like this. We have understood it. We are gathering information on the underworld gangs and their supporters. The police and the security forces will not take a step back in the face of such cowardly acts. Less than an hour following the tragic shooting in the Pittigala store, another violent incident unfolded, this time at a store in the Galagoda area of Ambalangoda. According to police reports, the incident was reported at around 8:40 p.m. A 22-year-old man and a 26-year-old father of 1 lost their lives. Sidum Sanjana, the person who operated the shop in Galagoda, was 22 years old.
Our son lost his life. He was wrongfully shot by the criminals in the underworld. They target to kill 1 person and they kill 4 to 5 people.
Udesh Madhuranga Mendes, the other person who was shot dead, was a resident of Galagoda. He was 26-year-old and father of 1.
My grandchildren are helpless. My son sets out to sea with his brother, but he did not go to sea yesterday because his child was ill.
Udesh, who was shot dead, has a son who is 7 months old.
Minister Harin Fernando disclosed that the upcoming national election will be a presidential election.
When's the election?
The country needs stability. However, the next election will definitely be a presidential election. That is also according to the country's election map. I do not believe that the president will fall for any party. He will be the common candidate. I must have faith in my party. If not, I will lose my position as well. The United National Party will reform. The SJB is also the UNP. We will come together at one point. That will be our strength. Wait patiently for what I will do on the 1st. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa says the SJB will bring about the change called for by
The opposition leader was at the Kalaweva Thalawa Mahavidyalaya in Anuradhapura to donate the 85th school bus under the Sakwala program.
Before
the end of this year, 4.1 million children will receive their education without any discrimination. They will receive breakfast. So, when there are comments on distribution of goods, I assumed that it is better than stealing. However, today, stealing has become good and distributing has become bad. That is the situation. We will bring about that change in this country.
The Order of the Rising Sun Gold and Silver Race Award by the Government of Japan was presented to Shiromi Susapillai, the President of Ikebana International Sri Lanka Chapter 262.
The Order of the Rising Sun Gold and Silver Race Award was presented to Shiromi Susapillai, the President of the Ikebana International Sri Lanka Chapter 262, at the residence of the Japanese Ambassador. Shiromi Susapillai received this award in recognition of her excellent contribution to the promotion of Japanese culture, Ikebana, in Sri Lanka.
In 2007, Ikebana International Sri Lanka Chapter 262 was formed by members of the CN Ikebana and Floral Arts Society of Sri Lanka, and Mrs. Susapillai was instrumental in the formation of the chapter. Her commitment extended beyond the borders of the country. In recognition of these outstanding achievements and contributions, the government of Japan, with deep gratitude, has decided to bestow upon Mrs. Shiromi Susapillai the Order of the Rising Sun, Gold and Silver Race. This award recognizes her unwavering commitment to the promotion of Japanese Ikebana culture for nearly 4 decades, and it is my honor and privilege to present her with the Order of the Rising Sun, Gold and Silver Race, in the presence of her beloved family and friends this evening.
Honor and a privilege to receive the prestigious Order of the Rising Sun, Gold and Silver Race for an art I am passionate about. Ikebana practitioners in Sri Lanka enjoy using the tropical flowers and foliage available to create beautiful Ikebana arrangements. It is an enjoyable and fulfilling hobby which makes the creator appreciate nature's creations. Freshness and originality is Ikebana's greatest appeal. My sincere thanks to His Excellency Hideaki Mizokoshi, Ambassador for Japan in Sri Lanka, and the Cultural Secretaries Anna Suzuki and Inoue Kenji for selecting me as a recipient of this prestigious and coveted award for a world-famous, world-renowned art dating from back to the 6th century.
Ikebana is a centuries-old Japanese art of arranging flowers. The practice, which roughly translates to making flowers come alive, uses carefully selected blossoms, greenery and other flora to convey a specific feeling or emotion to an observer.
Sri Lanka's first ever electoral sign language lexicon was launched in Colombo yesterday.
Sri Lanka is introducing first ever electoral sign language lexicon.
The Election Commission to Sri Lanka, in partnership with the Sri Lanka Central Federation and the DEF, the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, through the United States Agency for International Development, also known as USAID, announced the launch of Sri Lanka's first ever electoral sign language lexicon yesterday, marking a significant step towards ensuring inclusive and accessible elections for deaf and hard of hearing citizens.
We haven't yet normalized disability in our society as a positive identity. We have not normalized the expectation that persons with disability should be out and about and fully included in our society. Accessibility is still seen as an add-on. I'm going to say this again. Accessibility is still seen as an add-on, as costly, as different, as a burden. But accessibility actually benefits everyone. Accessibility creates more ways of us navigating this world. How do we break down the barriers so everyone in society can access? How do we get society to truly understand accessibility is not an add-on and accessibility is more than just one dimension? And that's the power of this program here today, the launch of the Electoral Sign Language Lexicon. It's beautiful. It's breaking down a barrier within our democracy to access democracy. We're not creating the voice of the voice. We have our voices. But we're creating a space for these voices to be brought forward and included. Because you know what? Our society will never achieve full peace, prosperity, and security if you don't include the disability community. If you don't include the 17% of the world's population. And if you don't include the disability community here in Sri Lanka. This year is an important year for many countries, both the US and Sri Lanka, because we have important elections coming up. And how do we continue breaking down the barriers so persons with disabilities' voices are heard, from voting, running for office, policy making, and so much more.
The event also hosted a Sing in Sign, adding a unique highlight to the event.
The government of Sri Lanka has decided to reduce the import tax on pink onions.
The 70 rupee levy imposed on imported pink onions has been reduced to 10 rupees. The government has made this decision to address the shortage of pink onions in the Sri Lankan market. Accordingly, pink onions will be imported with effect from today.
US President Joe Biden and his predecessor Donald Trump have both passed the delegate thresholds to clinch their party's nominations for the election in November.
4 states, 1 American territory and Democrats living abroad held their primaries on Tuesday. The result means US voters face a rematch of the 2020 presidential election in 8 months' time. The nominations will be made official at party conventions this summer. The shortest slate of elections follows last week's Super Tuesday, when Biden and Trump dominated across the map, putting both on the cusp of winning a majority of the delegates needed to be crowned their party's presumptive nominees. Their rematch, long anticipated but hardly clamored for, is broadly expected to mirror the 2020 campaign, though Trump will run this time under the specter of 91 felony charges related to allegations that he plotted to overturn his 2020 election defeat, played a lead role in January 6, 2021 insurrection at the US Capitol, illegally took classified documents from the White House, and covered up hush money payments to an adult film star ahead of the 2016 election.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News for tonight.
Thank you for watching.
Good night.